In this video module, you will understand the rubric used to score the Grade 10 Cornerstone Task and understand how to score the task. First, it is important to note the Cornerstone Task is meant to be a formative assessment and not a summative assessment. Formative assessments are a range of formal and informal assessment procedures conducted by teachers during the learning process in order to modify teaching and learning activities to improve student attainment. For our purposes, the Cornerstone Task is a more formal formative assessment that is administered and scored to determine student mastery of the transfer goal. In the case of the Grade 10 Cornerstone Task, the students are asked to demonstrate mastery of transfer goal number 3, apply knowledge of political and social structures to actively participate as an informed global citizen. As teachers, you don't necessarily have to assign a grade in the gradebook for this formative assessment, but you will need to use the rubric to assign students a score. These scores will help guide your instruction and give you an idea of whether or not students have mastered the transfer goal or if reteaching will be necessary. While the Cornerstone Task rubric is written using some advanced language, it is possible for all students to understand the rubric and be successful on the task according to the requirements of the rubric. First, in order to access the Cornerstone Task rubric, you should go to the Module 3A, Political Behaviors and Influences UBD template. Then, you should scroll down to Stage 2 Evidence, where you will find the Cornerstone Task under the first performance task. You should then choose the Cornerstone Task Teacher Instruction link. Once the document opens, you'll want to scroll down to page 2. On page 2, you will see a link to the task rubric. You should follow that link to open the Cornerstone Task rubric. When understanding the rubric, you should first understand that no one is expecting all or even any of your students to exceed expectations in every single category. Remember, this is a formative assessment. Ideally, your students should aim for this category, but most students will complete the task in the meets or approaches expectations area. You'll notice that the transfer goal is the first assessed area or aspect of the rubric. You should score the student's final project on the transfer goal last, because ideally, wherever they fall in other aspects of the rubric will give you a pretty good idea of how well they have mastered the transfer goal. For example, if the student approaches expectations in all other aspects of the rubric, then they are approaching mastery of the transfer goal. When you explain the rubric to students, which you should do upon introducing the task to students, you may want to draw their attention to the bold words. The bold words. These bold words are essentially the action words that will clue students in on what they need to do to meet those expectations of the rubric. For your more struggling learners, you may also want to work with the rubric more in depth by coming up with some additional, more student-friendly language to help them. For example, if you view the first standard under the transfer goal and you look under meets expectations, the second bullet says researches several interpretations with relevant evidence. A more student-friendly way to say this might be research different viewpoints or opinions and provide citations for the information that you find. Once you and your students understand the rubric, you may want additional information about how to score the task using the rubric. In order to see student exemplars with information about how these exemplars do and do not meet the expectations of the rubric, you can access the Government Cornerstone Anchor examples, which are linked on page 2 of the resource guide. As you can see, right now it is not a link, but it will be a link right here on page 2 where it says Government Cornerstone Task Anchor. If you have any additional questions about understanding and or scoring the Grade 10 Cornerstone Task, you should contact your appropriate content specialist.